Okay, what's in the molecule? Atom. Okay, an atom the size of my fist. Well, the next one being someone must have it. I mean, I'm talking fancy. Anyway, a long way away. What's inside the atom? Ooh, the electrons, protons, mesons, etc. And they, the size of my fist, we don't even know if they're particles or waves. It's difficult to talk about this, but they are long, long ways from each other. So we suddenly found that in this solid table there's more space than there is in any solid. There's a little bit solid. But as you vary it down, you go step down, it's like approaching a limit in mathematics. When you have a curve sweeping towards an axis, supposing it's an asymptotic curve, it's always getting nearer and nearer and nearer to that axis, but never actually collides with it. So we get nearer and nearer as we study substance. We get nearer and nearer to finding what is the shell around the emptiness. We get nearer, we never quite catch it. Solid disappears into space. As at this level of magnification, the space has disappeared into the solid. See, if I just have one finger, or the better illustration is I take a lighted cigarette in the dark. I just got one point, but I whiz it around and you see it in a circle. That's how you see a solid paper. Because everything goes so fast that your eye can't catch the spaces between. Too little, too quick. So, looking at things from one point of view, we find a lot of emptiness. Looking at them from another point of view, we find a lot of solid. But what you have to realize is that the solid is based on the emptiness just as much as the emptiness is based on the solid. So don't be afraid of nothing. It can't bite you. There's only something you can bite. There's nothing to be afraid of in nothing. And yet, mysteriously, nothing is the source of something. It's like the womb and the sea. So, yang and yin go together. But, through not seeing this, the whole of our life is, as I said, geared to the thought that we might be able to make the yang side win. And so, in every sort of human enterprise, we are trying to have white without black. When you talk about improving the world, you are meaning presumably that you want it more white than black, or whichever one you call the good one, and you think the black is the good. Sorry, it's a slight difference. Which side are you going to take in a game of chess, black or white? Doesn't make much difference. That white gets first move. No, I'll always wait to see what you're going to do. We think, could we get rid of the other one? Now, as you know, in all matters of practical living, it never works. Do you think now, I've been miserable all this time because I haven't had enough money? I never know whether I've made the payments on the car. I never know whether, there's going to be sickness. And if only I had a little more money, I'd really feel great. So you get it. And in the transition from one stage to the other, whoops, you feel very elated. Of course, you feel elated, you're going up. $5,000 a year. Makes a difference. When you've gone up, then of course you're on level. And no longer do you have to worry about making payments. But you get a new worry. Supposing I get sick and die. Supposing someone robs me, Takes it away from you. You worry about that. You say, oh, I feel so much happier if I have a medical examination. You go to a fancy doctor. This is not wonderful moment. Then always there might be burglars, so you get an alarm system and new locks. Finally go to Homes Patrol and get a private guard to watch you. That makes you feel better for a while, except then it begins to nag you. See, if I have a Homes Patrolman out there, they'll know I've got something. Maybe I better have two men. So, it grows. You worry. Because you found out that you didn't get yang without yin. You got a new yang, a bigger yang, instead of the former little one you had, but you got a big yin with it. It's no joke getting rich. It implies a great deal of responsibility, and you've got more to worry about. Don't envy rich people. Great mistake. Don't envy anyone. So, in the same way, Johnson puts it thus, he's Lazarus' successor. People who speak of having good government without its correlative misrule, or right without its correlative wrong, do not understand the basic principles of the universe. One might just as well speak of having yang without yin, and such people must be either knaves or fools. Because how would we know we were wise unless there were knaves and fools? But here it is, you see. You cannot beat the game. You can have the temporary illusion of winning. But by compensation, you will ever so often have the temporary illusion of losing. When you go down a step, from yang to yin, you feel, I've lost something. If you go up a step from yin to yang, you'll feel I've gained something. How would you know gain without loss? How would you have the sensation of more, and less in relation to the sensation less? For sensation is simply awareness of contrast. That's what life is. Now, if we realize that, we get the same feeling of frustration as I wanted to give you this afternoon, in trying to make it clear that so far as the improvement of ourselves and of the world is concerned, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. And this is simply another way of saying the same thing. You cannot have more yang than yin. You cannot play a game which is win and no lose, or a game in which everyone wins. Now, in just the same way, if we recognize that, applying yang into all the possible situations of life, you get this awful feeling of, so what's the use? I mean, what are you expecting to do? Jump into the river and drown? Now wait a minute. Why, at that point, do we get the feeling of, oh, what's the use? Simply because we found that our favorite game won't work. And we think that is the only thing for which there is any use, is the game in which white must win. But why not change them around? Isn't that a good game? Have to whine, like this. Goes in and out. It's the undulation of a wave, the crest and the trough. You can go on and do it. Every kid likes a roller coaster ride. It's great. So having both is the game. See, it's no game. What we think is the game isn't the game at all. We win all the time. Win. That's no game. Because the game is always the hide and seek. Now you see, now you know. The game is the story in which the villain might win. The whole idea of drama is to make it seem to the audience that the villain absolutely must win. There's no way out, and then suddenly, for whom the secret thing is revealed and the hero wins. Or if you want a good cry, have a tragedy in the villain. But don't you see, there is no vitality unless there's that native level. The villain, the devil, the nothing, the death, the out. You've lost. Finished. Bye-bye. Quit. See, if that's not there, then the other one's there. And you're always winning. First thing you know, you sit home with your wife and you play cricket. Lots of married couples try to forget holy deadlock by playing games. And if one partner, be it wife or husband, always wins at cricket, the game ceases to be of interest. Because every good player likes to strike the opponent who sometimes wins. Wins just a little bit less than me, mind you, but wins a great deal of the time. Yes, it's okay. Just a little bit. No. So, if you don't have the unknown space, death, darkness, negative, you don't have the light. So the art of life consists rather in something else than trying to make white win. You didn't sit down and weep because somebody tells you you can't make white win all the time, forever and always, so that black doesn't exist. Because black by its very nature is darkness and it doesn't exist. You're trying to make it not exist. It's irrelevant. The very fact that it doesn't exist is power. Non-existence is the necessary condition for existence. Just like you have to have a front before you can have a back. Or back before you can have a front. They come into being together, so existence and non-existence. So what are you afraid of? In trying to get rid of nothing, which is already gotten rid of. So we think, but surely this is rather harmless. There's up and down, up and down, up and down, seesaw, life, death, life, death, life, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. In some way, I mean, must we play this game? It's like the game of one-upmanship. You can't get out of it. You'll always play. And you can say, I will play it, means I got a more interesting game than yours. Which is just the same game all over again. Would there be a way somehow to transcend black and white? So we've got black, we've got white. That makes it even. But isn't there something else? Couldn't it be a tertium quid? A new possibility? So we can have a 3 basis instead of a 2 basis. Somebody comes up and says, all right, you're black and white, A and B, you constitute the 2 ends of the base of the triangle, and the apex. How about that? I said, that's odd. But it's odd, because it does do with even. I mean, when something happens, that's one, and that's odd. See, it's odd that anything should have happened. Very odd, it's clear. Would it be easier for there to be nothing? But then something happened. Then they said, that's odd. Then they recognized there was something and nothing. And then they said, all right, that's right, we're even. So the third fellow comes along and says, now, what about? And they say, you're out. Oh, wait a minute. You stand over against us. So that makes 2. We're even. You're off. Right, so that makes 2 out of 3. 3 equals 2. So we're together, we 2. We recognize that we're black and white. You can't have one without the other, so we're together. You say you want to be different, okay? That makes black and white different from whatever you say you are, so we've got the meaning, yang and yin. You can't get out of it. Make 4. Same all over again. Make 5, it's the same all over again. This was how Leibniz reasoned, and arithmetic could represent any number using merely 0 and 1. Damn. Can't we get out of this? Hey, what would it be if you were allowed 5 minutes with God? You're allowed to ask one question. What do you want to know? Because you know, you can sort this over now. You know that about the opposites, about the yang and the yin. And you know you can't ask God and say, hey, Big Daddy, will you give me a tip to beat the game? It won't work. And what shall I ask God? So you can think of all the things you might ask for. You know, an electric guitar, $1 million. And you know that wouldn't be the answer, because that would be yang. It'd be a big yin along with it somewhere. They have no one to ask. So you go and say, God, beyond positive and negative, what is reality? God, my child, your question has no meaning. Oh, there it's gone. One chance lost. What do you think? You get a friend of yours, you think, and somebody says, you ask him, what question should I ask him? He goes and says, oh God, what question should I ask him? And God says, so you do want a problem? Well, you've got them. You thought it up. You wanted the game in which white only wins. That's the problem. You made it up. You have to have that problem. Because otherwise, if you don't have the problem, you wouldn't know you were either. It's like, you can't be yourself without something you call other. How would you know you were you unless somebody else is somebody else altogether? In other words, the sensation that I hear, listen, sensitive, alive, keeping out, beady-eyed out of my skin, entirely is with reference to something over there, which isn't me. I don't know what it is. It works all by itself, and this you're pretty scared of. And there it is. But I can't have this feeling without that feeling. There's the same hocus pocus going on. If I can't feel me without having other, that's exoteric. Esoteric means I am the other. They're inseparable. How can you have self without other? How can there be other without self? You other on me, and self on yourself. I self on me, and other on you. But you can't, as it says, you can't have one without the other. And yin. So in the same way, I say, well, this other, I like to manage it. I like to control it. Now I know people around messing up my life. I don't want them to be that much up. I'm going to fix it. Then I get on a power kick. And there are all kinds of power kicks, let me warn you. It's not just politics, and economics, and business. The worst power kicks are spiritual. Like astrology. You like to know the future? Would you really? Power kick to know the future, so astrology. No surprise. If you know the future, it's already past. But if you want to know something, to have knowledge, then you must be the unknown. Just if you want self, you must have other. So the future is always the unknown. The past is the known. And what we witness as our present is the magical appearance of the known from the unknown. You know what's going to happen next second? I mean, it might be another big earthquake, right? But if you want to know something, to have knowledge, then you must do the unknown. Just as you want self, you must have other. So the future is always the unknown. The past is the known. And what we witness as our present is the magical appearance of the known from the unknown. You know what's going to happen next second? I mean, it might be another big earthquake, right? The past is going to fix it. I say, well, this other, I'd like to manage it. I'd like to control it. Now, I know people around messing up my life. I don't want them to be that much of it. I'm going to fix it. When I get on a power kick, and there are all kinds of power kicks that we warn you. It's not just politics, and economics, business. The worst power kicks are spiritual. Like astrology. Would you like to know the future? Would you really? It's a power kick to know the future so you can control it. No surprise. If you know the future, it's already past. But if you want to know something, to have knowledge, then you must do the unknown. Just as you want self, you must have other. So the future is always the unknown. The past is the known. And what we witness as our present is the magical appearance of the known from the unknown. You know what's going to happen next second? I mean, it might be another big earthquake, right? Any minute now. Or the Russians might decide to release the A-bomb. Any minute. We have a heart attack up there. You don't know what's happening. Well, we're there. Watch this thing happen. It's incredible. Just watch it. You, it, self-other, is this vibration. You think also now that self and other, that means voluntary versus involuntary. What I do and what happens to me. Now, what do I do? Well, I walk, I think, I talk, I move my hands. I can be nice to you or nasty to you. I would regard both as my doing. What about my blood circulation? I normally think that happens to me. I mean, if my heart would stop, I wouldn't say I've done it. I would say that it happened. The Buddhists will say, your heart stopped, that was your karma. And karma means nothing else except doing it. If you're doing it, your heart stopped. You know, that doesn't mean, don't take it literally in a superstitious way because you spat in someone's face in a past life, you're having half failure of punishment for it this time around. The universe is not near to the judicial system. I mean, a lot of priests figure it that way in order to frighten people. But karma means simply, if you die in a plane crash or have a heart attack, it's your doing. But that simply means you've got to rethink what you mean by doing it. Now, I've already proved to you that black is white. So now I'm going to prove to you that what you do is what happens to you. And what happens to you is what you do. Because you can't tell the difference between doing. You can't tell what you mean by doing unless something happens to you. You contrast it, and vice versa. You can't say of something that happens to you unless it feels different from something you do. Now let's take a look at our breath. Are you doing or does it happen to you? It's a good breathing exercise. You could feel I'm doing it. Thus I'm breathing in just as I might raise my hand. But after a while I breathe out. I feel like breathing out. And I forget all about it. It goes on. And it happens. That's why in yoga means unity, oneness. Same as the Latin yoga. Why yoga is breathing. Breathing is the main thing in yoga. So this will teach you the difference between what you do and what happens. You learn that through breathing. You can make the very best breath. See, we get as Christians understand. The Holy Spirit means breath. Spiritus in Latin, pneuma in Greek, ruach in Hebrew. Breath. Now, the ordinary breath, when most people's normal breathing, or forced breath, when, people try to sing, their voices forced. Then, the next breath is called Holy Spirit. Holy breath. The breath is not the force, it happens. When it's nirvana breath, blow out, same thing as Holy Spirit. And then that is So that's why when monks chant, or devotees of any kind chant, they have the idea that I am a flute, and the breath, the prana, the spiritus of the divine flows through it. That's what chanting is all about. Make yourself attuned to the divine wind. But that also means realize the unity of the voluntary and the involuntary. That's really what's meant by doing the will of God. Do the will. It's one reason why we get confused is whether we will or whether we shall. I will drown, no one shall save me. So, think, behind what you call God, you decide. Having reviewed the evidence, I have decided it would be best by this ground. Maybe how did you make a decision? Well, I reviewed the evidence, I ended up. I know all that. How do you work the machinery? In your head. You push all these buttons, but what's underneath the button? Oh, I don't know, I have a look. So you see that involuntary growth called the brain underlies your voluntary decision. Because when you decide, you don't first decide to decide, and decide to decide to decide. You just decide. That means there's something else behind it. Well, you think that's terrible, because if what I do happens to me, and it isn't really doing it at all, then I'm in a fatalistic state. Yes, but I said, on the other hand, what happens to you is what you do. It works equally that way. You have enough buttons, but what's underneath the button? Oh, I don't know, I have a look. So you see that involuntary growth called the brain underlies your voluntary decision. Because when you decide, you don't first decide to decide, and decide to decide to decide. You just decide. That means there's something else behind it. Well, you think that's terrible, because if what I do happens to me, and it isn't really doing it at all, then I'm in a fatalistic state. Yes, but I said, on the other hand, what happens to you is what you do. It works equally that way. You have an earthquake. And the thoughts in your head drift about like clouds in the sky. But you can't do anything. So in the same way, this whole strain, the futility of the strain to make white women to improve the world, that entire futility, the frustration of it is what you mean by I. Now it goes. It won't work, and the I collapses. Everybody is terrified of this happening. Suddenly finding out that you don't have anything. Heaven preserve me from that, as I've been building up this personality of mine all these years. I've been very carefully nurtured this personality. You tell me it doesn't exist. No, because your personality is a phantom even more than your body. Personality is a work of art. It's like music. It vanishes as soon as it's played.
I suppose most of you have heard of Zen. But before going on to explain any details about it, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. I am not a Zen Buddhist. I am not advocating Zen Buddhism. I am not trying to convert anyone to it. I have nothing to sell. I'm an entertainer. That is to say, in the same sense that when you go to a concert and you listen to someone play Mozart, he has nothing to sell except the sound of the music. He doesn't want to convert you to anything. He doesn't want you to join an organization in favor of Mozart's music as opposed to, say, Beethoven's. And I approach you in the same spirit as a musician with his piano or violinist with his violin. I just want you to enjoy a point of view which I enjoy. Now then, when that's been said, and I hope it's put your minds at rest, let me give you, first of all, some simple historical information. Zen is a form of Buddhism. It originated in China about 500 AD. And about 1200 AD, it migrated to Japan, where it exists today. And it is a form, it's a way of life that has had an immense influence on the arts and on the culture, the poetry and architecture of the Far East. It has lately become of enormous interest to many people in other parts of the world. Now, normally when one talks about Buddhism, Zen is a form of Buddhism, it is supposed that you're talking about a religion. And people are apt to classify themselves as Buddhists, as they might say, I am a Catholic, or a Methodist, or a Baptist, or an Episcopalian, or a Jew. But that is rather misleading. Buddhism is not a religion in that sense. If we want to find an equivalent to Buddhism in our society today in the West, probably the nearest thing to it is psychotherapy. When a person goes to a psychiatrist or a psychoanalyst to work out a serious personal problem, not because he's just nutty, I mean, not necessarily because he has hallucination or excessive singing in the ears with no clear physical origin, but when a person feels that his whole life is somehow disoriented and wrong, and he doesn't go to the preacher because the preacher only moralizes to him and says, my man, you should have more faith in God or something. And so he goes instead to a doctor because in our day, a man with the tag of science on him has more prestige than a man who has the tag of religion. And so when a psychiatrist goes to work on you, his objective is more or less to change your state of consciousness. That is to say, if your state of consciousness, your state of mind, is one of being day after day constantly depressed, the objective of going to a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist is to have your state of consciousness changed to one of happiness. Now, in a somewhat similar way, the objective of Buddhism in all its forms is to bring about a fundamental change in a human being's everyday state of consciousness. If I make it yet more specific, it's to bring about a change in your sense of personal identity, that is to say, in your sensation of who and what you are. And in this way, Buddhism, which I suppose you know, is a method of changing consciousness, discovered or invented by a man called Gautama, who lived in India shortly after 600 BC, who was given the title Buddha because the word means the awakened one, the man who woke up. And therefore, that very title suggests that ordinary people are asleep. I remember a very wise man who used to give lectures like this. And when he came in, he used to be silent, and he'd look at the audience. And he'd gaze at everybody in the audience particularly for a long time, and everybody would begin feeling vaguely embarrassed. And when he'd gazed at them for a long time, he'd say, "Wake up! You're all asleep. And if you don't wake up, I won't give any lecture." Now, in what sense are we asleep? The Buddhist would say that almost all human beings have a phony sense of identity, a delusion, a hallucination as to who they are. I'm terribly interested in this problem of identity, and I try and find out what people mean when they say the word I. I think this is one of the most fascinating questions. Who do you think you are? Now, what seems to develop is this. Most people think that I is a center of sensitivity somewhere inside their skin. And the majority of people feel that it's in their heads. Civilizations in different periods of history have differed about this. Some people feel that they exist in the solar plexus. Other people feel that they exist about here. But in American culture today, or in Western culture in general, most people feel that they exist in here. And there is, as it were, a little man sitting inside the center of the skull. And he has a television screen in front of him, which gives him all messages from the eyeballs. He has earphones on, and that gives him all messages from the ears. And he has in front of him a control panel with various dials and buttons and things, which enable him to influence the arms and legs and to get all sorts of information from the nerve ends. And that's you. So we say in popular speech, I have a body. Not I am a body, but I have one, because I am the owner of the body in the same way as I own an automobile. And I can take the automobile to the mechanic, and occasionally in the same way I have to take my body to the mechanic, the surgeon, the dentist, the doctor, and have it repaired. But it belongs to me, it goes along with me, I'm in it. A child, for example, can ask mother, Mom, who would I have been if my father had been someone else? That seems a perfectly simple and logical question for a child to ask, because of the presumption that your parents gave you your body and you were popped into it, maybe at the moment of conception or maybe at the moment of birth, from a repository of souls in heaven, and your parents simply provided the physical vehicle. So that age-long idea that is indigenous, especially to the Western world, is that I am something inside a body, and I am not quite sure whether I am or am not my body. Some doubt about it. I say, I think, I walk, I talk, but I don't say I beat my heart. I don't say I shape my bones. I don't say I grow my hair. I feel that my heart beating, my hair growing, my bone shaping is something that happens to me. And I don't know how it's done. But other things I do. And next, I feel quite surely that everything outside my body is quite definitely not me. There are two kinds of things outside my body. Number one is other people. And they're the same sort of thing as I am. But also they are all little men locked up inside their skins. And they're intelligent, they have feelings and values, and are capable of love and virtue. But the number two is the world that's non-human, that we call nature. And that's stupid. It has no mind. It has emotions, maybe, in animals. But on the whole, it's a pretty grim business. Dog eat dog. And when it gets to the geological level, it's as dumb can be. It's a mechanism. And there's an awful lot of it. And that's what we live in the middle of. And the purpose of being human is, we feel, to subjugate nature. To make it obey our will. And we arrived here, we don't feel that we belong in this world. It's foreign to us. In the words of the poet Houseman, I, a stranger and afraid, in a world I never made. And so all around us today, we see the signs of man's battle with nature. I'm living at the moment in a marvelous house in the Hollywood Hills. And we're overlooking a lake. And on the other side of the lake, the whole hill has suddenly been interrupted with a ghastly gash where they have made level lots for building tract homes of the kind you would build on a flat plain. This is called the conquest of nature. These houses will eventually fall down the hill because they are causing soil erosion and they're being maximally stupid. The proper way to build a house on a hillside is to do it in such a way as to effect the minimum interference with the nature of the hill. After all, the whole point of living in the hills is to live in the hills. There's no point in converting the hills into something flat and then going and living there. You can do that already on the ground. So the more people live in the hills, the more they spoil the hills, and they're just the same as people living on the flat ground. I mean, how stupid can you get? Well, anyway, this is one of the symptoms of our phony sense of identity, of our phony feeling that we are something lonely, locked up in a bag of skin, confronted with a world, an external, alien, foreign world that is not me. Now, according to certain of these great ancient philosophies like Buddhism, this sensation of being a separate, lonely individual is a hallucination. It's a hallucination brought about by various causes, the way we're brought up, being the chief of them, of course. I remember as a child, and you probably have very similar memories to mine, that all our parents were desperately interested in identifying us. Don't you remember that sometimes you went out and played with other children, and there was someone in the group of other children you admired and looked up to, and you came home imitating the mannerisms of that other child. And your mother said to you, Johnny, that's not you, that's Peter. You felt a little bit ashamed because somehow you had let her down. She wanted you to be you, her child, and not Mrs. Jones's child, Peter. And so in many ways, we're all taught this. For example, the main thing that we're all taught in childhood is that you must do that which will only be appreciated if you do it voluntarily. Now, darling, a dutiful child must love its mother. But now I don't want you to do it because I say so, but because you really want to. Or you must be free. See, this comes into politics. Everybody must vote. You see, imagine. You're members of a democracy. And you must be members of a democracy. See, you're ordered to. Crazy. Also, thou shalt love the Lord thy God. Is that a commandment or a joke? You know, if you suggest that the Lord is joking, most people in our culture are offended because they have a very moronic conception of God as a person totally devoid of humor. But the Lord is highly capable of joking, because joking is one of the most constructive things you can do. So, when you are told who you are, and that you must be free, furthermore that you must survive, and you must go on living, and that becomes a kind of compulsion, you get mixed up. It's very simple. Of course you get mixed up. If you think you must do something which will only be the thing required of you if you do it freely. These are the sort of influences, then, that cause human beings all over the world to feel isolated, to feel that they are centers of awareness locked up in bags of skin. Now, this sensation of our identity can be shown and demonstrated to be false by some of the disciplines of our own science. When we describe a human being or any other living organism from a scientific point of view, all that means is that we're describing it carefully. We're going to describe very carefully what a human being is and what a human being does. All right. And we find that as we go on with that description, we can't describe the human being without describing the environment. We can't say what a human being is doing without also saying what the world around him is doing. Just imagine for a moment that you couldn't see anything up here except me.
I'll write it down.
You couldn't see the curtains behind me. You couldn't see the stage. You couldn't see the microphone. You could only see me. That was all you could see. What would you be looking at? You wouldn't see me at all, because you wouldn't see my edges. And my edges are rather important for seeing me. My edges would be identical with the edge of your eyesight, with that vague oval curve which is the field of vision. And what you would be looking at would be my necktie, my nose, my eyes, and so on, but you wouldn't see my edges. So you'd be confronted with a very strange monster, and you wouldn't know it was a human being. Because to see me, you need to see my background. And therein lies a clue of which we are mostly ignorant. In Buddhist theory, the cause of our phony sense of identity is called avidya, and that means ignorance, although it's better to pronounce it ignorance. Having a deluded sense of identity is the result of ignoring certain things. So when you look at me, and I manage by behaving up here in a kind of a more or less interesting way, I cause you to ignore my background because I concentrate attention on me. Just like a conjurer, a stage magician, in order to perform his tricks, misdirects your attention. He talks to you about something he's doing here, and he talks to you about his fingers and how empty they are, and he can pull something out of his pocket in plain sight and you don't notice it. And so a magic happens. That's ignorance. Selective attention, focusing your consciousness on one thing to the exclusion of many other things. So in this way, we concentrate on the things, the figures, and we don't concentrate on the background. And so we come to think that the figure exists independently of the background. But actually, they go together. And they go together just as inseparably as backs go with fronts, as positives go with negatives, as ups go with downs, and as life goes with death. You can't separate it. So there's a sort of secret conspiracy between the figure and the background. They are really one, but they look different. They need each other, just as male needs female, and vice versa. But we are ordinarily completely unaware of this. So then, when the scientist starts paying attention to behavior of people and things carefully, he discovers that they go together, that the behavior of the organism is inseparable from the behavior of its environment. So you see, if I'm to describe what I am doing, what am I doing? Am I just waving my legs back and forth? No, I'm walking. And in order to speak about walking, you have to speak about the space in which I am walking, about the floor, about the direction, left or right, in relation to what kind of room, what kind of stage, what kind of situation. Because obviously, if there isn't a ground underneath me, I can't very well walk. So the description of what I am doing involves the description of the world. And so the biologist comes to say that what he is describing is no longer merely the organism and its behavior. He is describing a field